Dorothy's hands trembled as she stared at the piece of paper on her kitchen table. The words blurred together, but she didn't need to read them again. She knew what they said. Final notice. Eviction warning. 30 days. Her phone buzzed. A text from her daughter, Jennifer. "Mom, I really need $300. The kids need winter coats and I'm short this month. Can you send it today?" Dorothy looked at her bank account on her phone screen. $247. That was all she had until her Social Security check arrived in 2 weeks. She had already skipped her blood pressure medication this month to buy groceries. She had turned the heat down so low that she wore 2 sweaters inside her own apartment. She typed a response, then deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. Her chest felt tight. Her throat burned. For the first time in her 72 years of life, she didn't know how to answer her own child. Behind her on the refrigerator hung a photo from 5 years ago. The whole family at Thanksgiving. Everyone smiling. Dorothy in the center, arms around her grandchildren, her face glowing with joy. She remembered that day. She had cooked for 2 days straight. Bought everything, paid for everything. She had been so happy to have them all together. She couldn't remember the last time any of them had called just to ask how she was doing. "I spent my whole life making sure my children never felt poor," she whispered to the empty kitchen. "I never imagined I would be the one choosing between medicine and food."
If you're a mother who ever put your children first, even when it hurt you, even when no one noticed what it cost, this story may feel very close to your own life. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, even though you gave them everything, keep listening. This is the story of Dorothy, a 72-year-old mother who gave everything to her children. Time, money, dreams, her health, her future. Until one day, she woke up and realized she had nothing left for herself, not even safety. Dorothy is not a lazy woman. She is not a woman who made reckless choices. She worked her entire life. She saved when she could. She planned as much as anyone could plan. But somewhere along the way, between saying yes to her children and yes again, her own life disappeared.
Maybe you also skipped buying things for yourself so your children could have better. Maybe you also stayed quiet when they took advantage because you thought that's what a good mother does. Maybe you justified every sacrifice by telling yourself, what else is my money for, if not for my children? Maybe you're listening to this right now, and you already feel a weight in your chest, because parts of Dorothy's story are also yours. You're not alone. There are thousands of women, right now, sitting in quiet rooms, wondering when it became wrong to protect themselves, wondering if love is supposed to hurt this much, wondering if it's too late to say the word they've never said before. No. As you listen to Dorothy's story, notice which moments feel familiar. Notice where your own heart recognizes the pain, the hope, the guilt, the silent questions you've carried for years. Notice the places where you hear your own voice in hers. This is not just Dorothy's story. This is the story of mothers who loved so deeply, so completely, that they forgot to save a little bit of that love for themselves. Dorothy didn't always live like this. There was one specific moment, one choice she made when her youngest daughter, Amy, was 25, that set everything in motion. A choice that seemed loving at the time. A choice that would cost Dorothy everything. But to understand that moment, you need to know who Dorothy was before her children learned to see her as a bank instead of a person.
Dorothy grew up watching her own mother disappear. Her mother worked 2 jobs, wore the same dress for years, and smiled through exhaustion. When Dorothy was 16, she found her mother crying in the kitchen over an unpaid electric bill. Her mother looked up and said, "Don't ever let yourself get this small, Dorothy." But Dorothy didn't understand what that meant. Not yet. She married Robert at 23. They had 3 children, Jennifer, Michael, and Amy, and Dorothy felt complete. She worked part-time at a grocery store, and Robert worked construction. Money was tight, but Dorothy told herself that sacrifice was what mothers did. It was noble. It was love. The first time she erased herself for her children, she felt proud. Jennifer was 12 when she begged to go on the school trip to Washington, D.C. The cost was $250. Dorothy didn't have it, but she picked up double shifts for 3 weeks, her feet swelling in her work shoes, her back screaming by the end of each day. Jennifer went on that trip. Dorothy told herself it was worth it. When Michael needed $300 for a baseball training program that could change his future, Dorothy put it on her credit card. She thought she'd pay it off next month. But next month, Amy needed college textbooks. And the month after that, Jennifer's car broke down. The credit card balance grew. Dorothy started to feel a knot in her stomach every time she opened the mail. But she told herself, "This is temporary. They'll be stable soon. Then I can think about me." They never became stable. The requests just got bigger. By the time her children were adults, Dorothy had trained them well. She had taught them, without meaning to, that her needs didn't matter, that she would always figure it out, that no was not a word she was allowed to say. Jennifer called one evening, her voice already tight with stress. "Mom, I'm $100 short on rent. Can you help, just this once?" Dorothy sent the money. It wasn't just this once. Michael texted late at night. "Mom, my car payment bounced. Can you cover it? I'll pay you back next week." Dorothy sent the money. He didn't pay her back. She didn't ask. The pattern was set. And with each yes, Dorothy shrank a little more. There were signs. Small moments that should have been warnings. Once, at a family dinner, Michael joked to his sister, "Don't worry, Mom will bail you out. She always does." Everyone laughed. Dorothy laughed too. But inside, something cracked. Another time, Jennifer called and asked for money before even saying hello. When Dorothy hesitated, just for 1 second, Jennifer's voice turned cold. "Fine, Mom, I guess I'll just figure it out myself." Dorothy felt a stab of guilt so sharp it took her breath away. She sent the money within the hour. Amy once said, casually, while scrolling through her phone, "You don't really need that much for retirement anyway, right? You'll be fine." Dorothy wanted to ask, "How do you know I'll be fine? Did you ever ask what I have saved?" But she said nothing. She smiled. She changed the subject. She told herself they were just young, that they would understand when they were older, that one day they would look back and see everything she had done. Have you ever swallowed your own pain because you were afraid that speaking up would make you the villain? The requests changed. They got bigger, more urgent, more expensive. And one of them, a request that seemed harmless at the time, would destroy Dorothy's financial future completely. Amy showed up at Dorothy's door on a Tuesday evening. No text, no call, just there. Dorothy's stomach dropped before her daughter even spoke. "Mom, I need you to co-sign a lease for me." The words hung in the air. Cosign. Dorothy had heard stories. She knew what happened when things went wrong. But Amy's eyes were pleading, her hands twisting together. "It's just paperwork," Amy said quickly. "I'll be paying everything. You don't have to do anything. The landlord just needs your name because my credit isn't good enough. Please, Mom, I can't do this without you." Dorothy felt her throat tighten. This was different from the other requests. This one could follow her for years. "What if something goes wrong?" Dorothy asked quietly. "Nothing will go wrong," Amy promised. "I swear I would never put you in trouble. You know me." Dorothy looked at her youngest child, the one she used to rock to sleep, the one who called her Mommy the longest. She made a choice that would haunt her for the rest of her life. "All right," she whispered. "I'll sign." Amy's face lit up. She hugged Dorothy tight. "Thank you, Mom. You're saving my life." Dorothy smiled, but that small voice inside whispered, "Who will save yours?" 2 years later, Dorothy was 67 when the letter arrived. She came home from her shift at the grocery store, kicked off her shoes, and saw the thick envelope on her doormat. She opened it with shaking hands. Past due, outstanding balance, legal action. The apartment Dorothy had co-signed for. Amy hadn't paid rent in 3 months, and because Dorothy's name was on the lease, the debt was hers. She called Amy. Her daughter sighed heavily. "Yeah, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. Things got tight. I'll catch up, Mom. Don't stress." "Don't stress?" Dorothy's voice cracked. "They're threatening legal action. My name is on this. This could destroy my credit, my housing, everything." "You're overreacting," Amy said coldly. "It's just a letter. I'll fix it." But she didn't fix it. More letters came. Red ink, bold warnings, collections, judgment, garnishment. Dorothy stopped sleeping. She woke up every night at 3 a.m., her heart racing, feeling like the walls were closing in. Dorothy kept working. 63, 64, 65. She always imagined retirement as gentle. A small apartment, a garden, quiet mornings without an alarm clock. Instead, she was calculating which bills she could pay late without penalties. Her knees ached, her hands stiffened. Lifting heavy boxes made her dizzy, but she couldn't stop. She couldn't afford to. At night, she sat at her kitchen table with a calculator, moving numbers around like puzzle pieces that refused to fit. "Just 1 more year," she told herself. "Once the kids are stable, I can rest." But her children were never stable, and her body was giving out. Dorothy finally retired at 68, not because she was ready, because her knees buckled during a shift and she couldn't get back up without help. Her Social Security check arrived every month. It was supposed to feel like relief. Instead, it felt like drowning in slow motion. Rent went up, groceries doubled, her medication cost more than her weekly food budget. She made herself smaller. Rice and beans, 2 sweaters indoors, the heat never above 58 degrees, no bus fare, no coffee at the senior center, no small comforts. She hadn't bought herself new clothes in 4 years. She cut her own hair in the bathroom mirror. She walked past the pharmacy sometimes, telling herself she'd pick up her blood pressure pills next week when she had more money. Next week never came. Have you ever made yourself so small that you started to wonder if you still existed at all? Dorothy didn't tell anyone, not her coworkers, not her neighbors, not even Jennifer. How could she explain that at 72, after a lifetime of work, she was 1 bad month away from homelessness? She stopped answering calls from numbers she didn't recognize. Debt collectors, collection agencies, legal notices. She opened her mail with trembling hands, already knowing what she'd find inside. Then, in late November, 2 letters arrived on the same day. The first was from her landlord. Rent increase. $250 more per month, starting January 1st. Dorothy sat down hard. She did the math.
With the increase, she couldn't afford rent and food. She couldn't afford rent and medicine. She couldn't afford rent and heat. She would have to move. But where? And with what money? Her phone buzzed. A text from Michael. "Hey, Mom, can you help me out? Need $150 for my kids' school supplies. Kind of urgent." Dorothy stared at the message, then at the eviction warning on the table. Her vision blurred, her hands shook, her heartbeat pounded in her ears like a drum. She thought about every time she had said yes, every time she had swallowed her fear, every time she had chosen them over herself. She thought about the daughter who ruined her credit and called her dramatic, the son who never paid her back, the eldest who only called when she needed something. She thought about the woman in the Thanksgiving photo on her fridge, the one who looked happy, who looked like she mattered. That woman was gone. Dorothy had given her away, piece by piece, until nothing remained. And in that moment, sitting in her cold apartment with $247 to her name, Dorothy felt something she had never allowed herself to feel before. Rage. Not loud, not explosive, but deep, quiet, and undeniable. "If I give him this money," she whispered, "I will not be able to buy food. I will not be able to get my medicine. I will not be able to keep a roof over my head." Her voice broke. "And no one is thinking about me. No one." She picked up her phone. Her finger hovered over the screen. And then she typed one word she had never said to her children before. No. She stared at it. Her heart hammered. Guilt crashed over her like a wave. But underneath the guilt was something else, something small and fragile and new, the beginning of self-preservation. She pressed send.
The reply came almost instantly. "What do you mean, no?" Dorothy stared at Michael's message. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. Before she could type an answer, her phone started ringing. "Michael!" Her thumb hovered over the screen. For a second, she thought about letting it ring, letting it go to voicemail, but habits formed over decades are not easy to break. She answered. "Mom, did you seriously just text me now?" "Yes, I did." Silence, then a disbelieving laugh. "Since when do you say no? You've always helped me. You've always helped all of us. I can't help you this time, Michael. Can't or won't, because there's a difference." Dorothy closed her eyes for a moment. "I don't have it. I don't have the money." "You always have money. You've always helped before. What's different now?" "What's different," Dorothy said, her voice shaking, "is that I'm 72 years old, and I just got a notice that my rent is going up. I have $247 in my bank account. I already skipped my medication this month. I don't have anything left to give." There was silence on the other end, not the kind that meant he was listening, the kind that meant he was angry. "So that's it? After everything we've been through, you're just going to leave me hanging?" The guilt hit her like a punch. "My kid needs school supplies, Mom. This isn't for me, it's for your grandchild." The words were chosen perfectly. "Do you think I don't care about my grandchild?" Dorothy whispered, "I love that child with all my heart, but I can't keep taking from myself like this. There's nothing left." "You're overreacting. You've always figured it out before. You're acting like you're broke on the street." Dorothy let out a bitter, shaky laugh. "Michael, I am almost broke. I got an eviction warning today. Do you understand that? I might lose my home." Another silence. "If things are that bad, why didn't you tell us?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Because every time I tried to say I was struggling, you needed something more. Because every time I hesitated, just for a second, you made me feel like a bad mother. Because I was afraid that if I stopped giving, you would stop loving me." "That's not fair. I have my own problems, Mom. I've been struggling too. You don't know what it's like." "You're right," Dorothy said, and there was a strange calmness in her voice now. "I don't know what it's like to be you, but you don't know what it's like to be me either. You don't know what it's like to choose between food and medicine, to sit in the cold because you can't afford heat, to be one bad month away from losing your home." "Then why didn't you say something?" Dorothy let out a bitter laugh.
because every time I even hesitated, you made me feel like a bad mother. Every time I tried to say I was struggling, you had a bigger problem. Every time I needed help, you weren't there, but I was supposed to always be there for you." Another silence, heavier this time. "I can't believe you're doing this. You've changed, Mom. You're not the person you used to be."
She stared at the wall, whispered, "I'm not, because the person I used to be is gone. I gave her away, one piece at a time, until there was nothing left." Turn back into his voice. It didn't. Them. Not the quiet tears she usually fought to hide. This was grief, raw and loud and from the center of her chest. Grief, raw and loud and from the center of her chest. She wasn't crying because she had said no. Have you ever finally stood up for yourself and then watched the people you protected your whole life walk away?
The silence did not stay between just Dorothy and Michael. The next day, Jennifer called. "Mom, what is going on? Michael said you refused to help him when he needed money for his kids. Is that true?" Dorothy felt her stomach twist. "I didn't refuse," she said carefully. "I told him I couldn't. Not that I wouldn't. I can't. I'm in trouble, Jennifer. Real trouble." "Since when? You never said anything." "Did you ever ask?" The question slipped out before Dorothy could stop it. Jennifer went quiet. "I'm your daughter, not a mind reader. We all have problems, Mom, but we still help each other. That's what family does." Dorothy felt the old reflex rise up in her. Apologize, explain, backtrack. But she forced herself to stay still. "I have helped all of you," she said slowly, "for years, with rent, car payments, loans, emergencies. I co-signed a lease that destroyed my credit. I went into debt for you. I skipped medication for you. I thought that was what a good mother does." Her voice broke. "But a good mother is also supposed to survive," she whispered. "And right now, I am not sure I will." Jennifer exhaled loudly, the sound full of frustration. "I didn't know it was that bad. You didn't ask." Jennifer didn't respond. After a long pause, she said, I have to go. I'll call you later." She didn't call later. That evening, Dorothy sat alone in her small living room. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. She looked around at the space she had lived in for over a decade, the couch with the worn cushions, the small kitchen table, the photos on the wall of her children when they were young, smiling, innocent. She had spent her entire life being a mother. It was her identity, her purpose, her pride. But now she realized something she had never allowed herself to think before. Being a mother was not supposed to mean erasing herself. She had confused love with surrender. She had confused sacrifice with silence. She had believed that being good meant never having needs of her own. And her children had learned to see her that way too. Not as a whole person, not as someone with limits, fears, and a future that mattered, but as someone who existed to give. When you spend your whole life being everything to everyone else, you forget that you were also supposed to matter. 2 days later, Dorothy went to the small corner store to buy bread and eggs. As she waited in line, an older woman behind her smiled. "Tough times, aren't they?" Dorothy nodded, unsure what to say. "I saw you looking at your wallet just now.
I do the same thing. Count every dollar twice before I spend it. Dorothy looked at her, surprised. I raised 4 kids, gave them everything I had, and when I got older, I realized I had nothing left. It took me years to learn how to say no without feeling like a criminal. Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. Does it ever hurt? Not completely, she said. But you learn that protecting yourself isn't cruelty, it's survival. And the people who truly love you will understand that. Eventually. She patted Dorothy's hand and walked away. Dorothy stood there, holding her small bag of groceries, feeling something she hadn't felt in a very long time. She wasn't alone. Sometimes, the kindness of a stranger can remind you that you are not invisible, that your struggle is real, and that choosing yourself is not betrayal. It is wisdom.
The week after Dorothy said no for the first time, something shifted. Not dramatically, not like a movie, but slowly, like ice beginning to thaw. She couldn't ignore the rent increase letter anymore. She couldn't pretend everything would magically fix itself. So she did something she had been too ashamed to do for years. She called the senior center. Her hand shook as she dialed. Part of her wanted to hang up before anyone answered, but the eviction notice was still on her table. The choice was made for her. A woman named Patricia answered. I don't know if you can help me, Dorothy began, her voice tight. But I'm 72 and I'm about to lose my apartment. I don't have anyone else to call. You did the right thing by calling. Let's see what we can do. She connected Dorothy with a social worker named Mrs. Alvarez. Mrs. Alvarez didn't ask Dorothy why she hadn't saved more or why she had helped her children so much. She just listened. And then she helped. She walked Dorothy through applying for assistance programs Dorothy didn't even know existed. Prescription help, food support, utility assistance, a waiting list for affordable senior housing. It's not a lot, but it's something. And right now, something is enough. For the first time in months, Dorothy felt like she could breathe without her chest tightening. She went home and taped a piece of paper to her refrigerator, right next to the old Thanksgiving photo. It said, "I cannot give what I do not have." Simple, true, and the hardest boundary she had ever set. Dorothy started attending a small weekly group at the senior center called Coffee and Conversations, just a small circle of older women talking about life. At first, she only listened. She was too afraid to speak, too ashamed to admit what she had been through. But one afternoon, a woman named Beatrice shared her story. I gave my son $10,000 over 5 years. He told me it was for bills, for his kids, for emergencies. I found out later he was using it to gamble. And when I finally said no, he told me I was selfish. I used to think that loving my son meant never saying no, but all I did was teach him that I didn't matter. Dorothy's throat tightened. Tears slid down her face before she could stop them. After the group ended, she approached Beatrice. Thank you. I needed to hear that. You're not alone, and you're not a bad mother. You're a woman who finally learned to protect herself. Dorothy went home that evening and pulled out an old journal she hadn't written in for years. She sat at her kitchen table and wrote, I thought being a good mother meant disappearing. I thought love meant giving until there was nothing left. But I was wrong. I can love my children and still protect myself. I can care for them without destroying myself. And if they cannot accept that, then maybe they never truly saw me at all. She closed the journal and felt something settle inside her. Not happiness, not yet, but peace. Fragile and small, but real. Weeks passed. Michael didn't call.
Jennifer sent a few short, polite texts, but nothing real. Amy stayed completely silent. It hurt, deeply. But Dorothy didn't break. She didn't apologize. She didn't send money to win them back. She waited. And slowly, things began to shift. Amy was the first to soften. She called one evening, her voice quieter than usual, uncertain. "Mom, I've been thinking. I was angry when you said you couldn't help me, but I get it now. Or at least, I'm trying to. I'm sorry for the way I reacted." Dorothy's breath caught. "I'm managing. It's hard, but I'm managing. I'm sorry, I didn't realize how bad things were for you. I just... I guess I always thought you were fine, that you had everything under control. I wasn't fine. I just didn't know how to tell you. I'm sorry." They talked for a while. Not about money, not about what Amy needed. Just talked. Like they hadn't in years. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Michael took longer. Months passed before he finally sent a text. "I've been thinking. I was angry when you said you couldn't help me, but I get it now. Or at least I'm trying to. I'm sorry for the way I reacted." Dorothy read the message twice. She didn't respond right away. She sat with it, let herself feel it. Then she wrote back, "I love you. I always will, but things have to be different now. I can't keep sacrificing myself. I hope you understand. I know. I'm working on it." It wasn't a promise, but it was a start. Jennifer remained the most distant. She called once a month, but the conversations were surface level, polite, careful. Dorothy stopped trying to force warmth where there was only coolness. She grieved the relationship they used to have, but she also accepted that some bridges take longer to rebuild, and some may never be what they once were. Not every relationship heals, and learning to accept that without guilt is one of the hardest lessons of all.
By late spring, Dorothy had moved into a smaller apartment through the senior housing program. It was tiny, one bedroom, a narrow kitchen, but the rent was something she could afford. The heat worked, and for the first time in years, she didn't wake up every morning terrified of the mail. She had her medications again. She could buy vegetables. She kept the heat at a comfortable temperature. She still didn't have much, but she had enough. And more than that, she had herself back. She started volunteering at the senior center one morning a week, helping other women navigate the same programs that had saved her. One day, a woman in her 50s came in, sobbing. She told Dorothy her story. 3 adult children bleeding her dry, a mortgage she couldn't afford, guilt so heavy she couldn't breathe. Dorothy listened, and when the woman finished, Dorothy said gently, "You're allowed to protect yourself. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to survive. And you're not a bad mother for choosing that." The woman looked at her with wide, desperate eyes. "But what if they hate me? Then they never loved the real you. They loved what you could give them, and that's not the same thing." The woman broke down crying, but when she left, she stood a little straighter. Dorothy watched her go and felt something warm bloom in her chest. Purpose. Not the kind that comes from giving everything away, the kind that comes from having survived and choosing to help others do the same. That evening, Dorothy sat on her small couch with a cup of tea. She looked around her tiny apartment, at the secondhand furniture, the single photo on the wall, the one of her children when they were small. She thought about the woman she used to be, the one who said yes to everything, the one who believed that love meant sacrifice, always,
no matter the cost. And she thought about the woman she was now, smaller in positions, quieter in the world, but no longer invisible to herself. She whispered into the silence, "I used to think a good mother gives until she disappears. Now I know. A wise mother protects the woman inside the word mom." She took a sip of her tea and let herself feel it. Relief, grief, strength, all at once. She had lost some relationships. She had lost financial security. She had lost years to fear and silence. But she had gained something too. She had gained her life back.
1 year after Dorothy said no for the first time, she woke up on a quiet Saturday morning without an alarm. The sun came through her small bedroom window. The apartment was warm. She stretched slowly, her joints still stiff, but not screaming the way they used to when she worked those double shifts. She made herself coffee, real coffee, not the cheap instant kind, and sat at her small kitchen table. On the refrigerator, the note was still there. "I cannot give what I do not have." Next to it was a new photo. Dorothy and Amy at the senior center's spring lunch. Amy had driven 2 hours to be there. They were both smiling. It wasn't the staged, forced kind of smile. It was real. Things weren't perfect. Michael called once a month now, but he still asked for advice on money instead of actually asking how she was. Jennifer sent birthday texts and holiday cards, but the warmth was gone. Maybe forever. Dorothy had learned to accept that. Some relationships heal, some don't, and her worth was not tied to their approval anymore. She looked at the eviction notice she had kept, not out of shame, but as a reminder of the day she finally chose herself. Sometimes the hardest thing you will ever do is not keep giving. It is to finally stop and survive. Dorothy still loved her children. That never changed. But she had learned something that took 72 years to understand. Loving someone does not mean erasing yourself. Sacrifice is noble, but only when it doesn't destroy you. Being a good mother does not mean being silent, being small, or being everyone's emergency fund while you have nothing left for emergencies of your own. She had spent most of her life believing her worth came from what she could give. Now she knew better. Her worth came from simply being, from surviving, from learning, from standing up even when her voice shook, from finally saying, "I matter too." One evening, Dorothy sat down and wrote a letter she would never send. But she needed to write it anyway. Dear Jennifer, Michael, and Amy, I spent my whole life trying to be the mother you needed. I worked until my body broke. I gave until my bank account was empty. I said yes when I should have said no, because I thought that's what love looked like. I thought if I stopped giving, you would stop loving me. Maybe I was right. Maybe I wasn't. But I've learned something in these last months. I've learned that I was also someone's daughter, someone's friend, someone who mattered beyond what I could provide. I've learned that protecting myself is not betrayal. It is survival. I still love you. I always will. But I also love the woman I am becoming. The one who finally learned to say no. The one who chose to live. I hope one day you understand. Love, Mom. She folded the letter and put it in her journal. She didn't need to send it. She had already said everything that mattered. If you are listening to this story and you see yourself in Dorothy's life, this is for you. Your life still matters. Your future still matters. Your safety, your health, your peace, they all still matter. Helping the people you love should not cost you your dignity, your last dollar, or the final years of your life. Love does not require you to disappear. And saying no when you have nothing left to give is not cruelty. It is not selfishness. It is survival. It is wisdom. It is the choice that Dorothy made, and it is the choice you are allowed to make too. Dorothy's story does not have a perfect ending, but it has an honest one. She is still here, still standing, still learning what it means to matter.
And so are you. If this story felt close to your heart, you are not alone. There are thousands of women right now sitting in quiet rooms, wondering if they're allowed to protect themselves, wondering if it's too late, wondering if anyone will understand. It's not too late, and you are not selfish for wanting to survive. If you feel comfortable, you can share your story in the comments below. Not for judgment, but for connection. Your words might be the permission another woman needs to finally say the word she's been afraid to say. No. And if you'd like to hear more stories like Dorothy's, stories about finding strength after a lifetime of giving, about reclaiming your voice when the world told you to stay quiet, you're always welcome here. You are seen. You are heard. And you matter. Dorothy kept that eviction notice in a small box under her bed, not as a symbol of failure, but as proof. Proof that she had been to the edge, that she had almost lost everything, and that she had chosen, in the last possible moment, to save herself. Some people might call that selfish. Dorothy calls it survival, and she would make the same choice again. Thank you for listening to Dorothy's story. May it remind you that protecting yourself is not cruelty. It is love. The kind of love you were always allowed to give yourself.